Hey, Vibrant Life, it's Bio. I hope you all are doing well. It's a beautiful Sunday, sunshine and a cool breeze. Right now I'm out here in the Garth. This is our back garden side. It's a really beautiful area, just chill, nice. And I figured it would be a great area for us to film our first video. And just to kind of give you guys some preface on what I'm hoping to do here with this video, these are for our folks and our friends who aren't able to join us physically on Wednesdays for whatever reason. We're all young adults, so sometimes life just gets busy. I know you all want to be here. I hope you do anyway. But I know sometimes life gets busy. You have to work, you got family, a lot of different things going on. And so my hope is that, these videos will be about 3 to 5 minutes, maybe 7, hopefully not too long. Either way, they'll just be short recap videos of what we just did the previous Wednesday. So you guys can still get your Jesus no matter where you go, no matter where you're at. And as you know, we're currently in week 5 of our book series on the relationship principles of Jesus by Pastor Tom Holliday, the teaching pastor at Saddleback Church. And just this last Wednesday, our lesson and our time kind of concluded around the realm of the heart and the tongue and understanding that interchangeable relationship between the heart and the tongue. The scripture says in Matthew 12, verse 34, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So that tells us it's really vital and it's really important to be mindful of what's inside of our hearts, because out of that comes out of our mouth. And just one thing I want to preface before we get started is that interchangeable relationship flows and plays itself in the way of, what is inside of your heart does come out of your mouth, but what also comes out of your mouth also impacts your heart. So it's really important to be mindful of all the things that are influencing the things that you believe internally, the things that you see and feel and hear and think. Because that relationship is vital. That relationship is vital to everything. Jesus tells us it's very important to guard our hearts because everything flows from it. So obviously, if we take too much damage in this world, then our hearts can get closed out entirely. We can then be resistant to love. And it's love that makes us most like Christ. Love, Jesus tells us the Bible can be summed in 2 commandments: to love God with our hearts, souls, bodies, and minds, and to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And you see how love is at the root of everything. So if we don't take the time to really be mindful of our hearts, the enemy sometimes wants to play that role of all those things. The enemy plays the role of any way that destroys our capacity to love will take us away from Christ, because it's being like Christ, and it's love that makes us be like Christ. This series is all about looking at what Jesus did. We're looking at all of Jesus' reactions in the world. With strangers, with enemies, with friends, with whoever Jesus encountered on his way. Jesus interacted with them in ways that we can now inform and do for our own lives. And so for this particular lesson about the heart and the tongue, Jesus definitely dealt with times where he had to be really mindful and intentional with his heart and his tongue. There were people that tested him, that tried him, that said things to him that were not very kind and very nice. There were people that were asking questions to get him in trouble. But either way, there's a lot of different ways and a lot of different times that Jesus had a choice on how he was mindful in his words and his dialogue with people. In John 8, verse 19, Jesus was dealing with some criticism. He was being criticized by the Pharisees, who were teachers of the law. They were seeing Jesus, and Jesus was this teacher, and everyone was like, everyone's flocking around Jesus. And these Pharisees are looking at him like, who does this guy think he is? This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's some illegitimate son. He says he's the son of God. What a joke. They were just completely spiting Jesus. And so they were making fun of him, and they were just trying to give him a hard time. And so one point that I want you to have, especially in terms of being the heart and the tongue, is being criticized. Being criticized can be hard. It can be hard to deal with. It can be hard to take. We're only human. And so when someone's criticizing you or your character, and you're like, someone's saying, oh, you look like this or you did that, what's your innate response? What's your innate, what's the first thing that you want to do? Is it to criticize and argue back? Or is it to take and go into a shell? There's a lot of different ways that we can take this. But let's look at how Jesus did this. So the first piece we're going to be talking about is being criticized. When Jesus was criticized, he gave a clear answer and told the truth. And so in John 8, verse 19, when the Pharisees were calling him an illegitimate child and they were making fun of him, Jesus said, "You don't know who I am, so you don't know my Father. If you knew me, you would also know my Father too." Obviously, Jesus is talking about God here, his Father. If they knew who Jesus was, they wouldn't be over there criticizing him. But clearly they didn't know, because their hearts were closed, their hearts were turned. And this is why it's really intentional to be mindful of the things that are in our hearts. The next part we're going to talk about is doubt. It can be very frustrating when we're doubted, when we're telling the truth, and we're like, believe me, believe me, believe me. And still, people are like, I don't believe you, man. I don't know what you're talking about. So when Jesus was doubted, Jesus gave proof. So we look on John 20 verses 27, where we have the story of doubting Thomas, the disciple. So obviously Jesus had been dead around this time. Jesus was crucified, he died, everyone saw him die. And 3 days later, he was risen. And everyone was like, oh my God, Jesus is risen, Jesus is risen. But doubting Thomas is like, what are y'all talking about? Jesus literally just died. We just saw him get crucified on the cross. We saw him get buried. I don't know what you guys are talking about. If Jesus is alive, I want to be able to touch his side. I want to be able to physically touch him. And then one day, Jesus appeared. Jesus appeared to Thomas and was like, put your finger into my side. Do not be faithless any longer. Believe. Jesus and Thomas put his hand there, and Thomas was very surprised. Thomas was like, oh my God, you are risen. He stopped doubting from that moment. He believed. So again, I ask you, when you're doubted, what's your first innate response? Is it anger? Is it frustration? Is it indifference? So again, our theme is being mindful and intentional of our heart. So we've talked about criticizing, we've talked about doubting. The next piece we're going to be talking about is ridicule. So now we're talking about insults, we're talking about frustrations and anger. People are minimizing him. Oh, you're just some dumb fool. You don't know nothing. I don't know who you are or who do you think you are, but you're not who you think you are. Again, now we're talking about pure attacks on character. These are things that can make you get out of character. But how do you respond? How would you respond innately? In our text, Jesus was silent. Now we're going to go to the Old Testament, because we've been in the New Testament for a little while. Now we're going to go to the Old Testament. So the prophet Isaiah, in Isaiah 53 verse 7, Isaiah is kind of alluding to a future Messiah. He doesn't necessarily know who Jesus is, but he knows that Jesus is coming. He just alludes to him as the Messiah. And he said in that verse, he was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He was led like a lamb to slaughter and did not open his mouth. And for us, that's kind of giving us a little bit of what the world was like for Jesus when he was, being led to his death. When he was thrown in jail and they were beating on him and they were kicking on him, spitting on him, insulting him, ridiculing him, Jesus was silent, didn't say a single word. He's looking up at Pontius Pilate, and Pontius Pilate is looking, and he's like, how are you just silent and taken? Again, Jesus was being ridiculed, but yet he was silent. Jesus could have been angry. He could have been upset. Again, these people were insulting him. Oh, where's your father now? You said you're the son of God. Why? Well, why doesn't God strike us all down with thunder or lightning or something? But Jesus chose to remain silent, protect his heart. And lastly, when Jesus was rejected, he went elsewhere. So for us, rejection is hard. We are all human. No one wants to feel or be rejected, but yet, Jesus experienced rejection too. In Matthew 10, verse 14, when Jesus was commissioning his disciples to go out and serve, Jesus said this to them: if anyone does not welcome you into their house or listen to your words, shake off the dust on your feet when you leave that town. So, it can be really hard when you're rejected to beg people. Oh, no, please give me a chance. Please hear me out. Please, please. But Jesus said, no, don't worry about that. If you're rejected, go somewhere else. It kind of gives you perspective on value and seeing how, look, if people don't value you, don't value your time, your goals, your dreams, whatever you want to share with them, go elsewhere. Guarantee you someone else will. So we've talked about criticizing, doubting, ridicule, and rejection, all things that can really impact the matters of the heart. But going back to what I said at the very beginning of this lesson, your heart affects the words that come out of your mouth. And the words that come out of your mouth affects your heart. So understand that they're a tangible relationship on both sides. They both matter. It doesn't matter which side you begin with. They all impact you, your heart, and your character. Before we meet again on this upcoming Wednesday, I challenge you all to really be intentional when you see disconnects between your heart and your tongue. When you're out in the world and someone says something to you, maybe you're driving down the road and someone gives you a hard time. How do you respond? That could be an area where you could experience a disconnect between your heart and the tongue. Maybe even at work, when you're working at work and you're trying to do your job and you have a boss that just won't give you a break. Or maybe, you have a family member who, for whatever reason, maybe you forgot to do a favor or you got to take care of something and they're giving you a hard time and you're telling them, I did this, and I did it, and they're doubting you every step. Just be really mindful this week with doubts and criticizing and ridiculing. Be mindful of all those things and how they play a role in disconnecting your mind, your heart and your tongue. Friends, I hope this lesson was helpful for you, and I look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.